Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
Here.
Councilmember Kime.
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Here.
If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. So at this point, I would like to invite the council to come out in front and all of the various department directors to come down for our Employee Service Awards.
So we have a busy night. We are recognizing 18 employees for 20, 25, and 30 years of service. Good evening to everyone. Mayor Weiss, department directors, city council, and audience, thank you for being here to show your appreciation and support of the following 18 city employees. When your name is called, if you would please rise, and you may start on this side of the dais and end with the mayor here, where you will receive your reward. And also you may pose for a picture. All right, let's begin with Jason Baker. Jason started his career with the city of Oceanside on August 23rd, 1999. Jason was hired as a firefighter recruit and continues to serve as a firefighter paramedic. Please join me in recognizing Jason for his 20 years of service. Thank you, Jason. Next, we have Scott Bowers. Scott also joined the city of Oceanside as a firefighter recruit on August 23rd, 1999. In June 2007, Scott promoted to fire engineer. And then in 2015, Scott became fire captain, where he currently serves as. Congratulations, Scott, on 20 years of service. Thanks, Scott. Next, we have Timothy Huerta. Timothy became another member of the fire recruit team in August 23rd, 1999. Timothy graduated the academy, becoming a firefighter paramedic in November 1999. Thank you, Timothy, for 20 years of service to the community. Thank you, Timothy. Next, we have Lucifer Keener. Lucifer joined the city of Oceanside Fire Department in August as well, August 23rd of 1999, as a firefighter recruit. Lucifer has held the positions of firefighter paramedic until September 2010, when he promoted into his current role of fire captain. Please join me in recognizing Lucifer for 20 years of dedicated service. Thank you, Lou. Next, we have Michael Ian Shelton. Ian Shelton started his career with the City of Oceanside alongside the other recipients on August 23, 1999. After being a firefighter paramedic for 9 years, Ian became a fire engineer, position he currently holds. Thank you, Ian, for serving the City of Oceanside for the past 20 years. Next, we have Daniel Sean Fernandez. Sean launched his fire career with the City of Oceanside on August 23, 1999, as well as a firefighter recruit. In 2010, Sean promoted to fire captain, position he currently holds. Let's congratulate Sean for 20 years of service. Thank you, Sean. Next, we have Lynn C. Bloom. Lynn initiated her career with the City of Oceanside on August 18, 1999. Lynn is a registered nurse and supports the fire department as assistant training officer. She has devoted her Oceanside career to the fire department. Please join me in recognizing Lynn on her 20 years of service. Thanks, Lynn. Next, we have Olga Lugan. Olga launched her career with the City of Oceanside as a code enforcement officer in the Neighborhood Services Department. Through her dedication and hard work, Olga became Code Enforcement Officer 2 in 2001, and then Code Enforcement Officer 3 in 2017. Thank you, Olga, for 20 years of service to the community. Thanks, Olga. Next, we have Karen Laser. Karen began her career with the City of Oceanside Police Department on June 27, 1999, as a lateral transfer from LAPD. Karen became police sergeant in 2006 and then promoted to lieutenant in 2011, where she currently oversees professional standards as a police lieutenant. Karen has continued to serve the community and is being recognized for 20 years of service tonight. Thank you, Karen. Next, we have Ann O'Neill. Ann initiated her career with the City of Oceanside on June 27, 1999, as a police officer. Ann has devoted her career to public safety and continues to serve as a police officer. Thank you, Ann, for your continued service to the City of Oceanside. Congratulations on 20 years. Next, we have Keith Butler. Keith started his career with the City of Oceanside on May 8, 1999 as an automotive technician. In July of 2004, Keith became a Mechanic 1 and quickly earned his certification to become an Automotive Technician 3. Keith is currently a lead automotive technician for the Fleet Maintenance Division of Public Works. Please join me in congratulating Keith for 20 years of service. Next, we will be recognizing employees with 25 years of service. Fred Armijo. Fred began his career with the City of Oceanside's Police Department on June 12, 1994, as a police officer. He then promoted to police sergeant in 2001 and then promoted to lieutenant in 2007. In 2011, Fred became one of our dedicated police captains. Please join me in congratulating Fred Armijo for 25 years of service. Thank you, Fred. Next, we have John Jada. John began his career with the City of Oceanside on June 12, 1994. As we can see, John is a member of PERT, supporting PERT, and he has been serving the City of Oceanside for the past 25 years. Please join me in congratulating him for his service. Thank you, John. Next, we have Gregory Stolley. Gregory started his career with the City of Oceanside on June 12, 1994 as a police officer. His continued drive drove him to becoming a police sergeant in 2010, where he currently serves. Thank you, Greg, for 25 years of commitment to the City of Oceanside. Thanks, Gregory. Next, we have Richard Green. Richard began working with the City of Oceanside on July 5, 1994 as a Maintenance Worker 1 in the Harbor Division of Public Works. Richard's love for the harbor and his city drove him to become a Maintenance Worker 2 in 1997. And in 2001, Richard became a Maintenance Worker 3. He continues to serve his community at the harbor. Thank you, Richard, for your continued service. Next, we have Steve Rodriguez. Steve Rodriguez started his career with the City of Oceanside on July 17, 1994 as a Maintenance Worker 1. Steve became a Maintenance Worker 2 when he made a leap to Maintenance Supervisor in the Harbor Division of the Public Works Department. Steve will be retired as of tomorrow, so please join me in thanking Steve for his time here at the city and congratulating him. Thank you, Steve. Congratulations on your retirement. Okay, and for the final two service awards, these last two will be 30 years of service. William Barry. William Barry. William launched his career with the city of Oceanside on August 20th, 1989 as a maintenance worker 1. Through his dedicated work, William has held multiple positions within water utilities and currently serves as wastewater plant operator 3. Let us congratulate William on 30 years of service. Keith Perillo. Keith started serving the city of Oceanside as a maintenance worker 1 on May 8th, 1989. Keith has dedicated his time to the department and is currently a public works inspector. Congratulations, Keith, on 30 years of service with the city of Oceanside. And there is one final person who we will be recognizing. We don't have a service award, but I'd like to have Fred Armijo speak and recognize him publicly.
Thank you. If we can have Rob Moreno come down, please. So Rob is celebrating 25 years as well. He, Greg Staley, and John Janda were my academy partners. We all started at the same time. Rob's currently one of our patrol officers. He's been a detective, a field training officer, and he's been serving our streets for 25 years. So congratulations, Rob.
That concludes our service awards. Congratulations.
So at this time, I'd like to invite down the Oceanside Girls Fast Pitch Softball Club. They didn't. I'll just have them come up. There you go.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for coming. This is my 12U Oceanside Fast Pitch Girls. We went to state. We finished 17th out of 36 teams. They did a great job. It was over summer, about 6-7 weeks long. And for them to put that time in instead of going to enjoy the beach, whatever they could have done during summer, they put their time into softball. They did a great job. We had a great team. We had our bumps, here and there, but we actually pulled together and did a great job. I can't be more proud of these girls. They did a great job. Thank you. And by the way, if you do have a daughter that wants to play in our league, we have signups right now for our summer league, and then we have fall signups for WinCat. Fall signups is the Wilds right now if you want to come down for fall. We welcome all the girls to come in. We have great coaches. I was their head coach. The manager couldn't be here tonight because he coaches Oceanside High School football. But we welcome all girls, and we treat all the girls equally. So if they want to come down and learn and play, they can come down to our league, and we'll teach them how to play. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll go to our closed session report. Mr. Mullen.
Thank you. There was no meeting on item 1 on the closed session agenda. On item 3, conference with legal counsel on existing litigation in the matter of Steve Strachey versus City of Oceanside and Mueller versus City of Oceanside. The council discussed and gave direction on item 3. There's no action to report. With respect to item 2, public employee appointment, city manager, the City Council has unanimously voted to direct staff to discontinue the city manager recruitment and to place a proposed contract with Deanna Lorson on the agenda on September 11th, 2019 to serve as city manager, to be effective following the retirement of Michelle Lawrence, anticipated in October 2019.
Woohoo!
At this time, we'll go to our consent calendar, which is items 5 through 22. Do we have any requests to speak?
No request to speak on the consent calendars.
Move
Councilmember
adoption.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
At this time, we'll go to item 23, which is the adoption of a resolution regarding medical cannabis cultivation facilities.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Deanna Lorson, Assistant City Manager. The item before you is a medical cannabis program update. We will be providing some background on the city's licensing application process, current status, licensing recommendations, licensing next steps, as well as the conditional use permit process, and then discussing a potential cannabis tax, and then making some recommendations. Megan Crooks with the Development Services Department will be presenting the information up until the cannabis tax information, and then I will return to the dais to cover that item. Megan?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Megan Crooks with the Development Services Department. The background to date for the cannabis program is on April 11th, 2018, the City Council adopted an ordinance regulating the cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, and testing of commercial medical cannabis facilities. On April 14th, 2018, the consultant HDL was retained to assist the city in the application and license processing of medical cannabis facilities. On May 23rd, the City Council approved resolutions that staff brought forward establishing regulatory fees and application materials for the medical cannabis businesses. On June 20th, the City Council held a workshop to discuss the 1,000-foot separation requirement between cultivation facilities, the one cultivation facility per parcel limit, and to receive a police department report regarding dispensaries. The ordinance was introduced at that meeting, and then the ordinance was adopted at a future meeting in August, eliminating the 1,000-foot setback distance between cultivation facilities, and also eliminating the one cultivation facility per legal lot while retaining the 20% maximum lot coverage for cultivation facilities, and then also providing the ability for applicants of all types of licenses to request waivers of locational requirements. On September 5th, 2018, the council adopted another ordinance allowing 2 non-storefront Type 9 dispensaries. On June 25th, after the June 20th workshop, staff opened the round 1 application period for cultivation, manufacturing, and distribution and testing labs with a closing date of October 1, 2018. The round 1 deadline ultimately received 27 applications from 16 different business entities. 17 license applications were for cultivation, including 2 nurseries, and 5 license applications were for manufacturing, and 5 applications were for distribution. All 5 of those were a combo manufacturing distribution. On October 2nd, staff opened round 2 application period with a closing date of December 3rd. The round 2 deadline produced 7 applications from 6 different business entities. 4 license applications were received for Type 9 non-storefront dispensaries. 2 additional license applications were received for manufacturing, and 1 additional license application was received for distribution. Our current licensing status is shown in this table. Cultivation has a council-directed maximum capacity of licensing at 5. There's no cap on manufacturing or distribution, and the Type 9 non-storefront dispensaries has a cap per ordinance of 2. The applications were received, as I previously discussed with you, and then the local licenses that were issued and approved were 5 for cultivation, 4 for manufacturing, 3 for distribution, and 2 for Type 9 storefronts. We currently have a wait list on the cultivation of qualifying applications of 7 and 1 for the Type 9 non-storefront dispensary. Applications that were denied or withdrawn during the process, 5 for cultivation, 3 for manufacturing, 3 for distribution, and 1 Type 9 non-storefront dispensary. Currently, we have CUP applications that have been received, 1 for manufacturing distribution combo at 1 location, and then 1 for the Type 9 non-storefront dispensary. A total of 3 CUPs. Here's a map of the CUP sites for the cultivation sites, excuse me. We have the 5 approved, as I discussed, and those are shown in green. There are 2 physical sites, and then 7 waitlisted are shown in the orange-red color, and those are an additional 5 sites there. All are zoned in agriculture, and all are located in the South Morrow Hills area. Manufacturing, distribution, and Type 9 dispensary sites. We have 4 manufacturing distribution licensed, 2 Type 9 dispensaries licensed, and 1 waitlisted, and they're all zoned in light industrial or industrial limited. Let me go back. This slide shows you the airport mission area, and then we have 1 additional location, 1 of the 4 manufacturing in the eastern location of Oceanside, off of Oceanside Boulevard. For cultivation, staff recommends that a cap be set this evening by resolution of the City Council, limiting the total number of cultivation licenses to 12, while closing the application process for any future cultivation licenses. Any forfeited licenses out of the 12 would not be backfilled, potentially further reducing the cap. So if anybody did not proceed to acquire their CUP, or if they did not achieve a state license permit, then we would forfeit that license and we would bring a resolution reducing our cap. Adoption of the resolution this evening would result in the issuance of local licenses to the 7 additional qualifying applicants that are currently waitlisted. That would produce a total of 12 licenses, 2 combination cultivation nursery, and then they are all located on 7 distinct sites. So 12 licenses do not equal 12 different sites within the agricultural zone. It'll be 7 sites. For manufacturing, distribution, and Type 9 dispensaries, the city does not have a cap on manufacturing and distribution licenses, and the application process remains open. There is currently, actually, we received one more just this afternoon after 4 o'clock. There is currently 2 pending applications being processed. And after that, staff does recommend an annual application period once a year for the application types, manufacturing, distribution, and testing labs. The annual application period would close annually on the first business day of October. We also recommend that we maintain the current maximum license cap for the Type 9 at the 2 that is currently written in the ordinance and close that application process. For local licensing next steps, staff will be finalizing the licenses, the paperwork with the licensees, with their approvals, and that will include processing of all of their conditional use permits. We will formalize the community benefits program with the licensees. As part of their application process, they propose different community benefits that they would participate in Oceanside, and staff would like to formalize those proposals with them. We would establish the regulatory and inspection procedures through our contract with HDL Services. We would put together a regulatory program and inspection program, as well as establish a local license renewal fee that would come back to City Council by resolution, approval of that fee by resolution. The fee would, staff will do an analysis and make sure that the fee is going to be cost recovery of all regulatory and inspection costs that would be incurred by the city. And then we also recommend that we establish a staff position to oversee the program, also being cost recovery within the program. For conditional use permits, all licensees must receive a conditional use permit and a California state license to operate in the city of Oceanside. The CUP considerations and focus among all of our regular conditional use standards particular to cannabis will be odor mitigation, particular to the cultivation sites, environmental waste for both cultivation and manufacturing, security and public safety, and then also the waiver of locational requirements. Those would apply to the manufacturing, distribution, and Type 9 dispensary types. All regulated conditional use permits come back to City Council for final action, and every cannabis license, with the exception of testing labs, if we ever receive any, would come forward to City Council for final decision. And that concludes my presentation. I turn it back to Ms. Lorson.
Hello again. So in terms of a cannabis tax, most California cities that allow cannabis businesses have established cannabis taxes. Those taxes do require voter approval in a general election, and Oceanside's next general election will be on November 3rd of 2020. Through 2018, there were 164 local tax measures approved throughout California. A general tax would go into the general fund, and it helps to offset the cost to enforce illegal cannabis activities, as well as to fund general services in exchange for allowing these types of businesses. The approval requirement would be 50% of voters plus 1. And the City Council can place a measure on the ballot by a 2/3 vote, which would be at least 4 council members voting to place that measure on the ballot. Typical cannabis taxes include a gross receipts tax, which is through the business license process for manufacturing, distribution, deliveries, testing, and retail sales. And cultivation, there are several different tax methods: a per square foot of canopy, a gross receipts tax, or by weight. Typical tax amounts, both statewide and in San Diego County, are in the 6 to 8% range for gross receipts tax, and in $10 to $25 per square foot range of canopy for cultivation. These ranges allow flexibility to account for market conditions and local priorities. With regard to cultivation, there are 3 tax options, as I mentioned. The per square foot of canopy, typically they range from $10 to $25 per square foot, and locally they have been set in the range of $10 to $15 within San Diego. Tax revenue would flow to the city with this tax structure regardless of whether the crop performs or not. It's based on the canopy, not on the value or the product that's coming out of the crop. The second method that is used to tax cultivation is a gross receipts tax. Those typically range from 5 to 15%, and locally the rates are in the 6 to 8% range. And those types of taxes are only payable if the business actually has revenue to be taxed. And then the third option would be by weight. And this is done by the state. The state proposition that was approved by the voters included a tax on dry weight of flowers of $9.25 an ounce and of leaves of $2.75 an ounce. And there's one city that I could find that has actually enacted a local weight tax, and that's the city of Dunsmuir up in Northern California. They have a range of up to $3.50 an ounce, starting at $3 an ounce, and that is dry weight for all types of product. And one of the features of this type of tax is it does scale with the size of the crop, but it doesn't scale with the dollar value of the production. This slide shows cannabis tax revenue estimates. Now, these are based on the applications that we have received and the pro formas that were submitted as part of our application process, looking forward to their second year of operations when presumably they would be established and stabilized. In addition, we used industry information provided by our consultant to help calculate these rates. However, they are estimates. There is no guarantee that the businesses will actually build out to the level that they put into their applications, or even that the dollar values of the crops would be worth what they anticipate at this point in time, since it would unfurl over the next few years. But as you can see, for cultivation, if we were to use a $15 per square foot tax, assuming that 75% of the canopy is taxed, then that would be about just under $2.5 million for cultivation, about $100,000 for our nursery applications. And using those same 2 types, cultivation and nurseries, if we were to use $3.50 per ounce of dry weight, it would be about $3.7 million in revenue for cultivation. Nursery stock, however, doesn't produce a dried product, so it probably would not be taxed in this manner. That would have to be determined. Manufacturing and distribution is typically a gross receipts tax at a 7% rate. That would be just under $3.4 million of revenue. And type 9 dispensaries would also be gross receipts, and that would be about $800,000 of revenue. So that's an estimated range of $6.7 to $7.8 million, but very qualified, as I mentioned, based on applications and information that we have today. And there's uncertainties in how that will all unfurl through the permitting process and just as the marketplace changes in California. For some perspective, in California, the total cannabis market was $2.7 billion in 2018. That's projected to increase to $3.1 billion in 2019 and up to $7.23 billion in the year 2024. In 2018, the state of California collected $345 million in taxes. That included $182 million in excise and about $36 million in cultivation taxes. And in the first quarter of 2019, which is the latest information they've released, they collected about 61 million in excise taxes and about just under 17 million in cultivation taxes. So it's clear that the market is growing and the corresponding tax revenue is increasing as well. Within the city of San Diego, in 2018, they collected just under 5 million in taxes, and they had a gross receipts rate of 5% in effect until it went up to 8% on July 1st of this year. So presumably their number is going to increase significantly. And so with that, regarding the cannabis tax, staff does recommend that council direct us to put a tax measure on the ballot to establish tax rates. We would recommend a 6 to 8% range of gross receipts tax for all types except for cultivation, starting at 7%, which is consistent with rates in the area marketplace and the state of California. Additionally, we need to conduct additional research and obtain consultant input on what an appropriate cultivation tax rate would be, whether we should do the per square foot basis, the dry weight basis, or potentially even a gross receipts basis. And so we would then come back to you and present the recommended cultivation rate along with a potential ballot measure at a future council meeting. And so with that, our recommendations are that the City Council adopt a resolution formally limiting the number of cultivation facilities to no more than 12, and to direct staff to return with the actions necessary to place a cannabis business tax measure on the November 2020 ballot. And so both Megan and I, as well as Jonathan Borrego, Development Services Director, will be available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any public?
We have 10 speakers. Our first speaker is Erica Leary, to be followed by John Byron, to be followed by Amber Newman.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Erica Leary. I am the Program Manager for the North Coastal Prevention Coalition, whose mission is to reduce the harm of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and other drugs in the cities of Carlsbad, Oceanside, and Vista through community action, education, support, and collaboration. I've also been a resident of Oceanside for nearly 25 years. Just yesterday, the Federal National Survey on Drug Use and Health released a new report illustrating downward trends in many substance use indicators, all except marijuana. That was a multi-page report. One thing that stuck out to me was that for those initiating first use of marijuana in 2018, the greatest number were for adolescents ages 12 to 17, more than young adults and more than adults over 26. This was estimated to result in 3,700 adolescents trying marijuana for the first time every day. Here in San Diego, those statistics also bear out in SANDAG's latest report from Juvenile Justice, indicating that those testing positive for drugs are at a 19-year high, driven primarily by marijuana use, with 55% of those in the juvenile justice system testing positive for marijuana. And only 11% of those juveniles believe that marijuana can be harmful, compared to 97% who understand that heroin is harmful. Research is clear that marijuana use is particularly risky for the adolescent brain development. It can cause or worsen severe mental illness, especially psychosis, and is likely to increase the risk of developing schizophrenia. You may not see the connection between marijuana cultivation licenses and youth marijuana use, but it's all part of a new, growing, expanding industry, especially as those tax revenues project, not unlike tobacco, alcohol, or the pharmaceutical industries. We know already that patients, or anyone for that matter, can easily get marijuana from licensed or unlicensed websites and delivery services, or with a short drive down to San Diego. We also know that California is already overproducing marijuana, and much of it is ending up in the black market. The State Bureau of Cannabis Control is woefully understaffed and not doing much to enforce the regulations they have on the books. State tax revenue is way below expectations, and it will never be enough to cover the societal costs, just like alcohol and tobacco taxes. And the industry is expanding its powerful lobbying efforts in Sacramento, focused on reducing taxes, limiting regulations, and funding political campaigns. There's also a lot we don't know. such as how many city resources it'll take to oversee these cultivation licenses and other businesses. And I hope you keep those adolescents and juveniles in mind when you make your decisions this evening. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is John Byerman. I'm a prevention specialist for North Coastal Prevention Coalition. Part of our role is to share the best practices of local policies that help prevent and reduce substance use problems, such as limiting alcohol outlet density, social host ordinances, expanding smoke-free areas, tobacco retailer license. Because marijuana policy is so new, we really don't know yet what works. But based on decades of research with tobacco and alcohol policy, we're pretty confident that increasing production, access, and availability will take us in the wrong direction. I also know that with over 33 years of recovery from alcohol and other drugs, with marijuana being the main thing that got me involved, that people suffering from drug addiction likely started with their journey with alcohol and marijuana. Oceanside, like much of California, is in the midst of a homeless crisis. It would make sense to move slowly when it comes to allowing marijuana businesses. Staff and council decided on June 18th that 5 cultivation licenses would be reasonable to place as a start. Before more than doubling the number to 12, it would be wise to wait until those 5 open and assess the impacts they will have on the city resources, oversight, compliance, and surrounding areas. State Bureau of Cannabis Control is severely understaffed and is doing little to make sure that the state regulations are followed. Thank you very much.
Amber Newman, to be followed by Kathleen Lippett, to be followed by Michelle Keeler.
Hi, Amber Newman. While I can't say that I have often agreed with staff on the subject of regulating safe access for Oceanside patients, I do agree with their recommendation to increase cultivation licenses to 12. Not only does their recommendation put an end to the perceived cultivation monopoly, it presents this council with a unique opportunity to really change the perception of the process that got us here in the first place and exactly where that can take us in the future. There's still a lot of work to be done, but this is a necessary and appropriate step in the right direction. I urge you to please adopt the staff recommendation to limit cultivation licenses in Morrow Hills to 12. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Kathleen Lippett. I'm a public health practitioner, educator, and sound public policy advocate. I find all the casual references to the ever-increasing consumption of marijuana and the profits that are being made really distasteful, because what a successful and growing marijuana industry means is not the success of our young people. This is a predatory industry, and they pressure cities into allowing them direct access to even more youth. Elected's first obligation is to serve and protect the health, safety, and welfare of its residents. Your choice is fairly simple: to decide if an increased marijuana availability, footprint, access, promotion, cultivation, and normalization will support your community and the city of Oceanside, or the academic, social, or career goals of Oceanside's youth, or will it undermine them? The city will be severely challenged to oversee, inspect, regulate, or control 5 licenses. Allowing them to pressure the city into increasing it to 12 makes no sense. The more familiar the public becomes with this industry, its tactics, its harmful impacts on youth, the obnoxious advertising that they do, their bullying nature, and the less they like them. The reality of these businesses in your community bears little resemblance to the promises that they tell you they will abide by. They hope to follow, they say they will follow every regulatory control imposed on them until they have a presence, and then they will fight every single regulatory control you try to put on them. Marijuana profiteers are not interested in what is in the best interest of Oceanside or its residents or families, only their profits. They always go back to patients, but we all know this is never about patients and continues not to be. Thank you.
Michelle Keeler, to be followed by Becky Rapp, to be followed by Joel Weisberger.
If he called your name, come up to the podium so you can go right away. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Castellano Keeler. Apologize, I lost my voice. I am one of the applicant holders of the 5 applications licenses mentioned earlier under Oceanside Craft Farms. We have always supported and continue to support all of the qualified applications receiving the license, and we continue to support the move from 5 to 12 licenses, giving more agricultural opportunities to people out in South Morrow Hills. In addition, we support a reasonable tax for the city to work on that. I think that we could possibly be helpful in that discussion. As you mentioned earlier, a square footage tax could be difficult for a grower that hasn't gotten a crop yet. So we think there's probably some better choices, your second options. But we'd be perfectly happy to have that conversation offline. But on the whole, we support both of these measures. And thank you very much.
Good evening, my name is Becky Rapp. I am married and a mother of 5 children. I question the resolution before you today regarding 12 cultivation businesses. I recognize that these sites are supposed to be growing marijuana for medical purposes only. Surveys suggest that only 10% of marijuana users in California are using marijuana as a medicine. So 12 marijuana grow sites in one city seems like an overreach. I would like to respectfully suggest that all that pot Oceanside is going to be growing to be delivered to the illegal market and generally will find its way to young people. I know firsthand the very negative consequences of marijuana use beginning in adolescence. In addition to my 5 children, I am currently the guardian of a 6th child, now 3 years old, whose mother was living out of a car. She is a longtime marijuana user and her welfare money supported her habit, not her children. Her drug use began in her youth with marijuana and continues spanning 20 years, where she's lost all 5 of her children to the care of 4 different families. A city who is going to enable tons of marijuana to enter the marketplace, permitted or illegal, as Medipot or not, should consider the cost to the society, such as the thousands of dollars going to just this one family to assist them, and to serve the irreparable loss to the children of any parent who cannot properly care for them. This mother's marijuana addiction was based on the myths of marijuana that was sent by the adults and institutions to her in her early years. Please don't be one of those. The newspapers and magazines are already having a field day with stories regarding marijuana grows in Oceanside and litigation being threatened by those operators who want in on this money-making machine. But money-making for whom? The city or for those who profit from selling the drugs? Please understand that marijuana cultivation is a billion-dollar predatory industry. Postpone your decision tonight until you can be sure that the safety and health protection mechanisms are in place. Thank you.
Joel Weisberger, to be followed by Irina Morocco, to be followed by Michael Milano.
Good evening. My name is Joel Weisberger. I am the chairman of the Farm Bureau's Cannabis Working Group. I am also the CEO of White Mountain Farms, one of the 5 cultivation facilities awarded a license in the first round. I'm here to speak on a couple things today, and one with a license cap. I personally worked with the ad hoc committee throughout their whole process and working through, and I can tell you that the original intent for cultivation in Oceanside was to help the struggling farmers to find a crop that could be profitable. As it stands right now, with the 5 licenses allowed, that's less than 1% of the 3,000 acres of ag land that we have in Oceanside being utilized for cannabis. Less than 1%. If we raise that cap to 12, it's still less than 1%. So I really don't think there's any issue with raising the cap up to 12 to allow the other applicants in to get a chance. We're talking 1% of the ag land in Oceanside to be dedicated to cannabis cultivation. I really don't think that's extreme in any way. The second thing I'd like to speak on is with the taxes. I think that one thing to take into account is that under state law, cultivation is the only license type that pays an additional tax. The rest of the taxes come out of retail sales, and they're already paying a $9.25 per ounce, not per pound, but per ounce. Now, I can tell you that $9.25 per ounce is almost the equivalent in taxes of what it costs to produce a pound of marijuana. So to keep piling that up, it just doesn't seem right to be to have a tax on marijuana more than it actually costs to even produce. So I think that in moving forward on a tax, not that I'm opposed to a tax, it needs to be reasonable. It needs to be something that everyone can work with. Another thing I'd like to bring up that rarely gets mentioned is because Oceanside has allowed a cannabis industry, a regulated cannabis industry, Oceanside will be in line to receive state funds when those state funds start coming through. As the state starts receiving revenues from all of the cannabis throughout the state, Oceanside will be receiving funds as well as any taxes they put in. Thank you.
Good afternoon. You know, marijuana has been illegal for a long time, and people still grew it and people still got it. So trying to prohibit it is just going to exacerbate the problem and give us more of the same. Let's try something different. I fully support staff's recommendation in expanding the licenses with the tax revenue. Maybe if you bring forward a tax revenue bond initiative for the ballot, you could put in there where those revenues will go to, and let's put them into programs that will help keep them out of children, keep them away from youth, or help get rehab for people who have addiction problems. There's a lot of good that can be done with this. So, and I think this isn't about marijuana. This is about supporting our farmers. Isn't it? Isn't this what we need to do? This is an industry that can do so much good for Oceanside. I don't even know why you would be resistant to it. If you look at the programs that have been successful, they look very similar to what staff is recommending. You are cultivating in one area. That's a very smart thing. Keep it all in one area and that is the salad bowl of Oceanside. And I think that this is a program that it should be a win-win, it should be a no-brainer. People shouldn't be resistant to it because Lord knows the law, prohibiting it hasn't worked. It's made the problem a lot worse. So I hope you will support this. I hope you will even go further with it. I would love to see no caps on there, but for cultivation. Thank you.
Michael Milano, to be followed by Gina Austin, to be followed by Scott Pierce.
Good evening. My name is Michael Milano, longtime Oceanside resident and farmer. I would encourage council to support staff recommendation to lift the cap of 5. I've been a longtime advocate for allowing the ag community to have that crop as an option. I was opposed to the cap of 5. I didn't think it made much sense. It would be nice to get a larger scale in the city. We can all work together and move forward. I'm also in favor of a tax. I believe that if our businesses are successful, we can give some money back to the community, but it has to be reasonable. I mean, none of our businesses have one single dollar coming in yet. So once revenue starts coming in and we start to generate some money, we're happy to pay the taxes on that. Again, reasonable taxes is part of living in this country. One final point is started on this process with others in this room close to 3 years ago. And we were focusing on the medical market and the patients. The market in California is starting to shift, where many cities are just melding their medical and rec together. As a farmer, we're going to be growing a crop that could go into the medical supply chain or the rec supply chain. Right now, we wouldn't be able to do that in Oceanside. We would only be able to stick it into the medical supply chain. I would urge council to take a look at the potential of allowing the farmers to sell their product into the rec supply chain as well. The facility will look no different. The product will not be in the city, there's no dispensaries allowed in the city. It would just go into the statewide supply chain and allow us to be more competitive and more successful, which then would allow us to pay more taxes. Thank you.
Gina Austin.
Good evening, Council. My name is Gina Austin, and I represent cannabis applicants throughout the state. I also represent the applicants that would benefit from lifting this cap, people that are on the wait list. And so we fully support staff's recommendation and would encourage Council to approve the number up to 12. As the cap. And as the other speakers have indicated, it is a very small percentage of the agricultural land that is here in Oceanside. With regard to the tax ordinance, we also support the tax, adopting a tax ordinance, and I agree with Mr. Milano that it needs to be reasonable. And one of the suggestions that I can make to staff and council as you go back and look at this, if you choose to adopt a tax ordinance, is that you need to compare apples to apples. Currently, what you saw in terms of tax dollars was an apples to oranges, because every one of those jurisdictions allows for only indoor cultivation. They do not allow for outdoor cultivation, they don't allow for hoop houses, they don't allow for greenhouses, and in doing so, you're looking at a disparity. And the reason is that if you look at jurisdictions throughout the state of California, El Dorado County, Atascadero, Calaveras, Contra Costa, every one of those has a different taxing scheme for outdoor cultivation versus indoor cultivation. Outdoor cultivation can start as low as $1 because you get 1, maybe 2 crops a year. Indoor, you can have 4 or 5 crops a year. So there's a big difference and there's a disparity there, and it would be beneficial for staff to look into that if they come back with a tax recommendation. The other area that is important to think about when we're looking at taxes, if you adopt a square foot, is to look at the difference between nursery and cultivation when you're talking large plants, full-size plants versus nursery-size plants, because there's a difference when you're selling those into the market. In closing, we definitely support the measure before you, and we also support a tax measure. Thank you.
Scott Pierce, to be followed by Ben, to be followed by Larry Balma.
Good evening. My name's Scott Priest. I live here in Oceanside and Guahomie Meadows subdivision. I'm married, have 3 kids, ages 16, 13, and 8. My wife teaches middle school. I'm a chartered financial consultant. I've been following your decision for some time to permit marijuana businesses here in the city of Oceanside, and I'm gravely concerned about it. As a financial advisor, as a father of 3, and as a resident taxpayer here in the city of Oceanside. First, as a financial advisor, I understand that these cultivation and manufacturing businesses are supposed to be for medical pot purposes only. But I have to ask, who are we kidding? Who at the city is going to run around and assure that the pot grown in the city or pot products manufactured in the city, like vaping cartridges, are going to show up in Medipot stores only, or on a shelf in a recreational pot store marked for certified medical pot only? As we must surely know, the state is not going to do it. They have not even permitted enough testing facilities, nor has the city, and neither have they hired any enforcement personnel to do so. In actuality, our city should put the implementation of its permitting process on hold until a testing facility is permitted and opened out of respect for its citizens' health and safety, especially since this is supposed to be about vulnerable medical pot patients, right? That said, we all understand that patients and their caregivers have since 1996, and still to this day, have the right to grow, exchange, deliver pot to each other, so access has never, and I repeat, never been the problem. It is a red herring to hide behind sick people for raking in huge profits from addictive drugs. And I asked before, who are we kidding? Prop 64 was about personal possession of pot and growing 6 pot plants at home for recreational use. Prop 64 was not about commercializing pot businesses. In fact, cities were assured they could retain their rights to not allow marijuana businesses as a land use, some 70% of which have done just that. In closing, as a father, I'm appalled at the enabling of businesses that derives its money from the addiction of others, especially young people. And as an Oceanside resident and taxpayer, I'm embarrassed that you feel bullied into this moneyed interest, threatened by a ballot initiative. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Ben. I'm 16 years old, live here in Oceanside, and I'm here to ask questions regarding the city's decision to permit marijuana growing in the city. So my family rents a house on the beach every summer for a family reunion that includes 34 family members. This year we were pleased that there were no beachgoers who were drinking or smoking on the beach in front of our house. However, there were pot smokers. My grandmother told them to go away, that the city did not allow smoking or vaping of tobacco or marijuana on the beach. When the pot smokers, about 30 years old or so, got off the beach, my grandma reminded them that there were young children in the house that did not want to have to smell the marijuana. I was proud of the city for feeling that. I'm proud of my city personally for feeling that way, and that the city council and enforcement officers understand that the health and safety of its citizens is very important. However, I am very confused that you feel that Oceanside should grow pot. It smells, it is water insensitive, and has a huge problem with water runoff and pollution and environmental waste disposal problems. Where is the pot going after it has been grown here? Will it be transported out of the state of California, which, however, is against the law? How will you know where the pot that you grow is transported? That seems like an impossible task, in my opinion. I don't think Oceanside is a better, cleaner, or safer city for growing marijuana, and shouldn't that be our goal, to make it better? Thank you.
Larry Balma, to be followed by Steve Bruns, to be followed by Nick Lewis.
Larry Balma, 745 Sleeping Indian Road, South Morro Hills. I'm president of the South Morro Hills Association. The South Morro Hills Association supports the opportunity for legitimate farming operations to be able to obtain a permit to allow a professional, legal, permitted, and secure cannabis cultivation opportunity on agricultural land. The city has set up a reasonable working framework in our zoning ordinance. Expanding the number of permits available offers more opportunities to farmers who are willing to make a substantial investment in cannabis in order to be competitive and successful. On another note, I've been a manufacturer for the last 50 years and paid taxes based on the business license on what our gross sales are and stuff. And the tax thing is something that needs to be done, but it needs to be really studied well to figure out what is a way to work, because of course we don't want to tax people out of being successful or sustainable in their business. So thanks staff and everybody for all their work on this, and I know it's going to be ongoing. Thank you.
Steve Bruns.
Good afternoon, Steve Brunst. I'm with Ocean Grove Farms, one of the applicants in question, and wanted to come up here and express my appreciation for everybody's efforts today and support the staff decision to expand from 5 to 12 licenses. I'd also like to echo some of my fellow applicants who discussed both taxation and the type of classification, whether it be medical or adult consumption. For the taxes, we do look forward to working with you closely on learning more about how these taxes work, finding the best strategy that benefits everybody. It would be hopefully ideal. There are different models out there, so hopefully we can all work together on that. Relative to use, as Mr. Milano referred to, currently it's set as medical. And as we know throughout the state, many counties and cities have adopted both medical and adult use combined under the same license. I think the reality is the restriction to medical would make it very difficult, if not impossible, for a farmer entering this market to be financially viable. Because essentially what's happening is you're restricting them to about 15 to 20% of the market or less. So we hope that that is something that we can discuss further as well. And once again, thank you for your time.
Nick Lewis, to be followed by Dolan Young.
Thank you. My name is Nick Lewis. I'm an employment lawyer. I'm part of Oceanside Grown Farms as well. I support the expansion to 12 licenses. I look forward to cultivating cannabis responsibly. Oceanside, especially with mixed light where you're utilizing the sun, Oceanside's got an amazing microclimate to grow really high quality cannabis. And doing so in a responsible way is what I look forward to doing. It's a very competitive business. I hear, some negative connotations. I hope people realize how highly regulated cannabis is, especially when you're comparing it to things like alcohol. It's a competitive business. And as to taxation, I would say really keep that in mind. It's very highly regulated. I grew up in Monterey County. I would encourage you guys to look at what the Board of Supervisors did in Monterey County. They had a $15 per square foot tax, and they had to reduce it to $5 because it was killing the farmers. It's obviously a industry that's just at its outset, and it takes a while to get up to speed. So I would say at least look into some kind of maybe sliding scale so that, again, farmers can compete and make Oceanside, as successful as it should be, especially with, as I said, the microclimate and the knowledgeable farmers. I think we can, do really great things here. Thank you.
Hello, Council. My name is Dallin Young, and I'm with the Association of Cannabis Professionals. I do want to say thank you, staff, for your recommendation, and I do want to express our support for staff's recommendations today by expanding on those licenses. A couple things I did want to talk about was the tax revenue that you're expecting to be generating. First off, I think kind of all the opposition that we have here today is talking about the issues that we have with the black market, and with the amount of tax that you're proposing today, that's going to make the cost of these products even higher for consumers in the area, which is going to drive them into the black market and the illicit market. Anyways, in fact, 80% of the current cannabis market in California is in the illicit market because prices are too high. So when you are looking at the tax measure, I would recommend that you bring that down as low as possible so that it keeps all of Oceanside farmers in business so they can compete with the rest of the state. When you're looking at the revenue that is expected to be generated, I do think that is far too high. In fact, as of February of this year, the city of San Diego, from the beginning of January in 2018 to February of this year, generated $6.3 million in tax revenue off 14 retail locations. Those retail locations serviced both medical and recreational sales. So when you're talking about the tax that you're supposed to be putting on cultivators right now, and per staff's recommendations, you're going to have 20 license types overall, strictly with the medical. You are not going to reach the expected amount at all. If you wanted to do that, and if you are focusing on tax revenue, you need to expand the licenses. I would recommend probably no caps on that and go recreational as well. But per what we're looking at right now, myself and the Association of Cannabis Professionals would like to support staff's recommendations. Thank you.
There are no more speakers.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. Thank you, staff, for bringing this forward. When I first, early on, I had some really good conversations with representatives from our farming community here in Oceanside. And I really understood that, and I have since even before this conversation, our small farmers especially are struggling. Our agricultural lands are so critical. I would say not just to our region, but to the state, because we are looking at climate change. We are looking at potential food shortages someday. And this is such great farmland really in the nation. And the one thing that I wanted to make sure is that we do whatever possible to keep farming in Oceanside, keep our farms in Oceanside. So So some of the conversations had to do with, what would be able to help farmers would be to allow farmers to grow cannabis, because what they want to do is they don't want to become, as they said, pot farms. They wanted to be able to diversify the revenue. That's it, diversify the revenue. And so I came into this discussion accepting that we need to do what we can to support our farmers, and that this is something that I was willing to support, and that is that to allow cannabis cultivation in Oceanside. There was no discussion before about caps. That came actually after a couple of votes on the council dais and direction to staff to look at, initially at least, the cap of 5. I still feel that we should not have caps. I actually voted against the last motion because I did not like the idea of capping it, because for me that meant that maybe the larger farms would be able to benefit. But in terms of the small farmers that, for me, are the ones that are really struggling, and the ones that we really need to be able to assist in any way possible, they were going to be completely left out from this process. So I still feel that way. I still feel that we should not have the caps. I also recently, in this past week, have had a conversation with some of the applicants, or I think a couple of the applicants, and I knew when this was coming that, since there has been this talk about cultivation now in the state for quite a while, that the medicinal probably would be reaching saturation. And I, wondered if, it was even going to be able to be profitable for our farmers. So I had conversations about lifting the ban on cultivation from just medicinal, which doesn't, it is a process of exporting at this point. And I have to agree that it doesn't make any real sense. There's no real nexus to what we're doing with the other businesses in Oceanside. So I'm going to be supporting the motion, but my direction would be to explore lifting the caps and really benefiting our small businesses, small farmers as well, and also exploring expanding cultivation to recreational. As to the basis for the tax, I am persuaded that that staff needs to explore more the basis for the tax, and that not just be square footage. I especially the very beginning, it's going to be extremely difficult for farmers. There's a huge learning curve for some. I understand that there's a lot of basic expertise in this, and that you really have to get consultants, and of course that costs a lot. And so for us, we're here as in terms of a learning curve, not just for the cultivation business, but also in terms of the city. So I would also give direction to staff to look at the different ways of taxing, and to ensure that we don't overburden this industry. And one of the things that was my concern from the very, very beginning was we have a plan for agritourism, and I want that to continue to go forward. And so I want to make sure that it's side by side. So, we know that one of the biggest challenges is going to be odor control. And I feel very confident that that is something, not only at the state level, but certainly here, that can be controlled. I think, I have great expectations for continuing on with our vision for agritourism. So I just wanted to bring that up, that for me, that is really the one thing that you all know is very important. As to the ballot we're talking about putting this tax on the ballot in November 2020. And I actually would like to also add dispensaries to the ballot. I think that we're heading in this direction. And the one thing that I want to make sure is that we have access. Vista passed up to 11, so that's pretty close. I think that we were talking, well, there were some folks that I was having conversation with, had to do with maybe 3 or 4 in Oceanside. I guess that would not need a ballot measure, but I definitely want to see that happen. So for now, I would make the motion that we adopt the resolution and provide direction to staff with respect to, of course, the basis for the tax, and also explore expansion of the cultivation. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Feller.
I'm not going to second it. No. We were told by the parade of people for the last couple of years that medical marijuana was all they wanted. That was what they told us if we approved it. And that's why I gave the approval, I think it was in June of a year ago or some, I don't forget the time frame, but and the number of dispensaries and delivery dispensaries and manufacturing and cultivation was supposed to be for our residents. I think what we're seeing here is what I ultimately thought was going to happen. So I don't know what the state charges, and I don't know what I know it's if we're allowing for more dispensaries, we're just shipping marijuana. I mean, cultivation. We're just shipping marijuana to other people's children, and my children are in the school system, gradually getting out of it, but they're kind of stuck in it, and they're actually telling me that everybody's in the kids' world. Everybody is, the people they know, but it is prevalent right in the schools, and they're using the vaping and these Juul things. I just think we're just going down a really slippery slope, and I think that I'm not going to support this, but if you do pass this, I think the tax should be whatever the maximum is. I'm not going to tell you what that is. Probably 50% would be fine with me. I might even vote for that. But whatever you come up with, I would say good on you, but I do not support this.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
I think we're getting close to election season. A little bit about me. I'm a father of 7 children. My oldest is 20. My youngest is 8 weeks. Happily married. I'm a father. I live out in South Memorial Hills where these proposed cultivation sites are. And I have a very strong sense of smell. And that's the last thing I want to be smelling when I'm out in my front yard in the morning, having a cup of coffee. And so I'm going to trust staff. I'm going to trust consultants. I'm going to trust technology and the CUP process to heavily get involved to ensure that we don't have those impacts and those issues. This must be a conversation today with my colleagues here about local control. Who here heard what happened in Vista when individuals with money want to enter into the cannabis business? They move on a ballot initiative, and those ballot initiatives are ugly. I'm not afraid of them, but what I do want to do is I want to control them. And the way we control them is we come to a meeting of the minds, we get constituent feedback, and we find that common ground that we all can get on the same page with. Otherwise, you're going to see dispensaries on Coast Highway or in South Oceanside, and we're not going to have that control. So today's conversation needs to be about local control and coming to a middle ground compromise, because it's happening all around us. And whether you like it or not, it's coming. So do you want local control or not? Rest of my notes are on my phone. 1 second. Proposition 64 in 2016, it allows adult usage, AKA recreational use. Adults are allowed to legally smoke weed, smoke cannabis, without having to get a medical card. And since that law passed, medical cards, registrations have what? They've declined, right? It's easier to just go to a recreational or adult usage facility. And so with that decline, we're seeing more and more cultivators, and we see more and more local jurisdictions adopting to adult usage versus medical usage. And so the next part of this conversation, I really want it to be about our farmers and to be about our agricultural lands. The conversation today is to set farmers up for success. They're about to engage in about a $200,000 application process and a $3 to $5 million build out. And if they're only able to sell to 20% of the industry that surrounds them, they're going to fail. It's business. If you have a business and I say you can only sell to 2 out of 10 buyers, you're going to fail. And so we have to have the conversation today that allows farmers to grow, same impact, same facilities, and be able to sell to 100% of the market. We're at a unique point in time. We have an opportunity to tangibly support farmers in a new and innovative way and to create the potential for up to 400 jobs under these proposed staff recommendation 12 licenses. 30 to 35 jobs per license will be created. We have spent a lot of time and a lot of resource into build a locally controlled program that will support our farmers. And I believe that all these efforts will be in vain if our farmers are not able to grow successfully and sell to 100% of the market. And so I'm good. I support staff's recommendations with respect to the 12. I would like to have a conversation and hear from my colleagues about when staff, and I'm going to touch base on how much time do I have left? Great. I do want to have a conversation with my colleagues about what that tax will look like, but more importantly, before we even start talking about taxes, if these farmers are not going to be successful out the gate and to be able to grow and sell to 100% of the market, then, like I said, all of this is kind of a waste of time, and it will only put further pressure on future ballot initiatives. So I really want to have a discussion that when we give staff directive, that they prepare some language changes to the ordinance to consider allowing farmers to grow and sell to the highest bidder so they can be successful. I would even further like to consider, any of the non-public cannabis facilities that has no interactions with the public, they're going to have the same problem. So if they're manufacturing, distributing, testing, like they're not interacting with the public, they're going to have the same dilemma. They're going to have the same issues. And so I would like to just explore those language changes so that this is set up for success. It's set up for 100% of the market and not just 20 and then eventually down to 10. Now, with respect to taxes, this is a very, very important conversation that we need to spend a lot of time on, not now, but in the future with consultants and staff. We really have to look at the long-term effect of whatever we decide on the taxes. I'm completely against the canopy per square foot. I think that's set up for failure. These businesses and farmers have enough expenses out the gate. They don't need this. You know, this needs to be a partnership, a city with farmers, and we grow together and we're successful together. So the square footage thing's got to go. I more lean toward dry weight. I think the state was smart in moving toward dry weight because some years you're going to have a great crop, you know, like I do with avocados or guavas, and some years you're going to have a bad one. But we grow with the farmers, and if we tie it to a weight, I think that amount per ounce or pound should be in a range, so it allows for future council directions when, you know, we're not up here anymore. They can say, you know what, the market's changed, let's lower it for these guys. Secondly, I would personally, because I don't like taxes, I don't like paying taxes, but we have to, I would personally like to be the lowest tax city with respect to cannabis in the region. Because when we set that par, guess who's going to come here to buy from our farmers? Everyone. And we're going to set that standard. And I think that will also encourage the legal distribution of cannabis versus the illegal market, which is flourishing even more now because of all these taxes. And I'm not going to make a motion because I want to hear from Mayor Peter Weiss and Councilmember Keim, but that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
I think there's a motion on the floor anyway. Councilmember Keim?
So as many of you know, I spent almost my entire career in law enforcement, so the first thing I naturally think of is public safety, and I do have concerns with driving safety, with access for juveniles, and unintended consequences that Prop 64 could have, and wide-ranging cultivation, manufacturing, and retail. However, I don't believe this issue today is about that as much. Staff came forward with 5 initially, and to make it a more equitable process, the 12, all having passed a thorough process. And speaking with the police department, development services, I'm confident it was a thorough process. It was, we have a good idea of how these businesses are going to operate. But the important part for this is whether you have 5 or 12, it's in one area, but we have to be able to address and mitigate any impacts that these businesses have, whether it's smell, whether it's crime. And so we have to have a strong licensing and a strong CUP. And I talked to staff about this extensively. So if we have a business that has an issue, we have to be able to address it immediately and effectively so it doesn't have an impact on quality of life or safety for any of the neighbors. And I think at the end of the day, that's our job in government, is to make sure our citizens are safe, healthy, and happy. So, I mean, that will be my first priority as this goes forward, is to make sure all these businesses, as they're going forward, are complying with their CUPs, with their license, and if they're not, then we need to address it. So, thank you.
So I think there was a motion by Councilmember Sanchez to approve staff recommendation and also to come back with a revision that would allow the cultivators to be able to sell for recreational purposes, which would be outside of the city. I will second that motion and support that at this point in time. Councilmember Sanchez?
Right. I just wanted to add something. I understand where Councilmember Rodriguez is going. Local control actually means citizens control. It's either by initiative or the local city government. They're both considered local control. I too want a balance. That's why I had agreed to the 3 to 4 dispensaries. I know that's something that we're probably not ready to address right now, and we actually do have time. That's why I said I will support the motion. The staff's recommendation, which is to go ahead and do the 12. And I'm really pleased that we're willing to go forward with cultivation of recreational, because it is about ensuring the success of our farmers. So with that, I just, I do want to continue this dialogue. We do have time. For now, we're talking about these 12 applicants who did pass at least this part of it. There's still the conditional use permitting, which is another, another big process. So, yeah, I just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez.
Really quick, because the conversation about the ordinance was not agendized, we need to give staff direction to prepare language changes that they can bring back at a future date, and in order to get public feedback with respect to ordinance language changes to incorporate recreational. So maybe that could be a separate
No, that is the direction. They want a direction, so that we're just giving them direction to come back.
Mr. Mullen?
Mm-hmm.
As I understand the motion that was seconded, the motion is to approve the resolution that would increase the number of cultivation licenses to not to exceed 12. Staff would also prepare amendments to the ordinance and agendize those amendments that would allow cultivators with recreational licenses to sell outside of Oceanside.
Could that language be, could that language not just reference cultivators, but all pretty much everything, all non-public, the manufacturers all the way through, so
It could, but I've only heard support for cultivation at this point.
That's just
cultivation.
For now, I think 3 of you have said cultivation. We haven't heard beyond that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 4-1, Feller no.
At this time, we'll go to our 6 o'clock public hearing, which is introduction of ordinances regarding the modification of Article 12 of the zoning ordinance in regards to eliminating the density cap for the downtown and other similar restrictions. I'll open the public hearing and we'll start with disclosures.
Only staff.
Staff, and I've heard from several people from the public, including developers and developers' representatives.
Staff and public.
Staff.
Are we ready to start? Yes.
City Council, good evening. The zoning and local coastal plan amendment before you this evening pertains to development regulations and density limits for downtown mixed-use projects. Last January, the City Council directed staff to evaluate existing density limits in high-density zones and return to Council with recommendations. Staff analyzed several options, including the elimination or increase of residential density caps, and examined location where such increases or changes may facilitate high quality development. It was concluded that a number of areas may be considered for density increases. However, at this time, downtown subdistrict areas zoned for mixed-use development best lend themselves to such development. These types of projects would add to the downtown's housing stock more units of smaller size, but within the same building envelope, and benefit from the proximity of existing transit facilities, and will contribute to the existing land use mix within that area. To that end, a legislative draft with potential text amendments to Article 12 and Chapter 14C of the Municipal Code was produced for your consideration. The scope of the amendments is very narrow, and it's basically limited to 6 primary points and a few non-substantive clarification to the zoning ordinance. These 6 points are identified on the overhead on the screen, and they're as follows: the removal of the 43 DUs per acre density limit only for mixed-use development in the downtown. The second is to clarify the floor area ratio standards only apply to non-residential development and the non-residential development of mixed-use developments. To require inclusionary housing regulations within projects in the downtown area, expand the existing transit-oriented development boundaries, allow tandem parking to be consistent in the downtown with the rest of the city, and update the land use matrix to be internally consistent within Article 12, which provides the standards for downtown. I will briefly touch on each one of these modifications in more detail. The first item is the removal of the 43 DU per acre density limit for mixed-use development. This change will only affect 9 sub-districts within the downtown, and those areas are identified with a crosshatch on the exhibit. The recommendation is to maintain the existing redevelopment plan cap of 5,500 dwelling units that it's applicable in the downtown area, and also retain the development standards that are applicable to mixed-use development, in essence allowing more but smaller units within the existing envelope mass bulk height that it's permitted in that area. The second modification is to the floor area ratio, and this is to clarify that the FAR standard is only applicable to non-residential development and non-residential portions of mixed-use development. This will not have an impact with regard to the density or the bulk that would affect the residential portion of mixed-use projects. I want to mention that the building height will be maintained as it stands today, and there's no changes proposed to that. The third modification pertains to the inclusionary housing provisions. This particular change would impose inclusionary housing regulations to residential projects and mixed-use projects within the downtown area, which would be consistent with the rest of the city. This will affect portions of the zoning ordinance, and it will require a modification to Chapter 14C of the Municipal Code. Modification 4 is the expansion of the transit-oriented development, transit-oriented district. The existing district is outlined in green on the exhibit that it's shown on the screen. Staff is recommending that the radius for transit-oriented development be expanded to half a mile walking distance from the boundary of OTC, the Oceanside Transit District. And this will only include those properties that fall within the downtown. It will exclude all other areas beyond the downtown limits, such as and including Townside, Seaside, and South O. Modification 5 is tandem parking. We're recommending that we bring tandem parking regulations in line with the regulations that are applicable in the rest of the city. And modification 6, we're proposing to update the land use matrix in order to add a separate land use designation for mixed use in order to provide clarification, also identify where non-residential, single family, and non-residential with residential multiple family would be permitted within the specific sub-districts. Staff feels that the proposed amendments would facilitate further revitalization in the downtown area, would provide developers with the tools necessary to build successful projects, and will contribute to the city's housing, economic, and community development goals. And we're recommending that the City Council introduce the ordinance to approve ZA 1906, zoning overlay 1901, and adopt a resolution to forward to Coastal Commission LCPA 1906 for certification. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Do we have speakers?
We have 2 speakers, Scott Ashton, to be followed by Ann Gunter.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Scott Ashton, CEO of the Oceanside Chamber of Commerce, and I am here to express the Chamber's support for the removal of the density caps as it relates to mixed-use development regulations within the downtown district. We also support the expansion of the existing TOD boundaries to include sites within half mile of the Oceanside Transit Center boundaries. Part of the Oceanside Chamber's housing creation platform is to support growth in transit-friendly areas, and we believe that the recommendations of city staff and the Downtown Advisory Committee are aligned with our position. The staff report analysis says that clarity in development standards and certainty in the decision-making process is essential to achieve high-quality community design and environmentally and economically sustainable development. We agree wholeheartedly with that statement and believe the approval of the density cap removal and TOD boundary expansion is a great step in the right direction. And we commend city staff for their work on this issue, and we believe that the adoption of this recommendation is critical to meeting our community housing needs, and we ask that you move forward on this tonight. Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. My name is Ann Gunter, and I'm a Vice President with the Lightfoot Planning Group. Our offices are in Carlsbad. I'm here tonight not as a lobbyist, and I am a registered lobbyist for the city, but I'm here as a professional planner. I have worked with the Oceanside zoning regulations for more years than I care to talk about. And typically, I wouldn't be before you commenting on zoning regulations. But in this case, I feel like the council kind of went out to something that's a little bit new in terms of eliminating a density cap. And I know that that can be a little scary for people. It can be a little controversial. And I think that staff did a really excellent job in crafting these regulations, in working through to make sure that, in fact, these regulations are clear. They've cleaned up a lot of the confusing language that was living in those downtown ordinances because of all the things that have happened through the years. So I'm not really going to tell you anything that hasn't been addressed by staff, but I wanted to emphasize that I think that the way these rules are crafted will, in fact, do what I think you're hoping to do, which is to broaden the housing opportunities downtown. This is a great place to see how this works and to put people in housing and different income levels into your downtown area to maintain the vibrancy that is Oceanside's downtown. The amendments as they're proposed keep the parameters in terms of height and setbacks and the things that control the form of development, and yet they allow for some creativity and for some innovation, which I think is really beneficial. There's also still opportunity for you as decision makers to look at specific projects, to evaluate those projects as they come forward in individual designs. And overall, I just think these are really well-crafted and balanced regulations, and I'd like to encourage you to support the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Are there any additional speakers? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And I will like to start with just by saying that the initiation of these changes were the direct result of the majority of this council giving direction to staff. And I appreciate staff's efforts to put this together and bring this forward. And with that, I will make a motion that we approve staff's recommendation.
Second.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Thank you. I am going to support it tonight. I do have some concerns about tandem parking when you don't have a plan, especially if you have a whole building and you don't. I think it has to include responsibility for the actual building of residents, whatever it be, an HOA, whatever, that they have a real plan for that tandem parking, and that they really not create problems by having only one car parked if they have the capacity for two, and then park outside on the streets. My biggest concern is that while we're building public parking, some of that public parking is going to be taken up by residential use, and it ought not to. That is for our residents coming down to the beach. It is for our tourists coming in, and so I want to make sure that there is a plan for addressing that potential, because that is what seems to always happen. Right now we're in a transition. Someday we're going to have less, people with, not wanting to invest in cars and not wanting to put them in kind of their own storage, because I think of a garage sometimes as a storage place. And we will finally have that easing of demand for parking. It's not the case right now. I do feel that we are probably going to be dealing with a lot of complaints about parking in, residential neighborhoods. So that is what has been kind of the trend, and I hope staff will be ready to address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez?
It is officially election season. Wow, I am really impressed that we're going to have hopefully unanimous support on this. I just want to state on the initial disclosures, I thought we were on item 24, we moved to 25, so I want to update my disclosure. I spoke with staff countless times on this. I spoke with multiple developers, including the BIA, on multiple occasions, and I'm excited to move forward on this. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Feller?
Thanks. In '82, they approved 5,500 homes, isn't that right, for this area? And it was mostly because there was a lot of open space down here.
Correct.
Or space to be named later. The Regal Theater was a park probably into the late 80s. And I think this will be probably something that can help with our arena numbers, which is density more or less around transit. So I did have a question. Over on one page it says, would not apply to properties within a half mile from the OTC that are not within the downtown zoning district. But how about if it's from within a half a mile of, are we expanding that to half a mile throughout the city, such as other transit centers or other train stations?
Mayor, Deputy Mayor Feller, no, at this point in time, our recommendation is for the expansion of the TOD only as it pertains to the areas within the downtown district. This amendment only would amend only Article 12, which is limited to the downtown, the old redevelopment area.
And I was kind of hoping we'll look at that, but I'm also questioning not questioning, but hoping for a variety of different uses that will come along with that housing. So I sat in on NCTD's little presentation today, and I think it's pretty exciting to see what they want to do down there too. So, yes,
yeah,
yes, sir.
Deputy Mayor Feller, I just wanted to touch upon a couple of points that you made that I think are actually worth mentioning in the context of the discussion. First of all, with respect to the half-mile radius, you may recall that we are actually, as a matter of fact, yesterday I believe we issued the request for proposals for the next phase of our general plan update, which is a very exciting project. As part of that, as you may recall, we did receive a grant from Caltrans to specifically study our transit corridors. So certainly as part of that effort and as part of the general plan update, we will absolutely be looking at expanding the TOD boundaries along our transit corridors. So to your point and concern, I think that we will be addressing that moving forward. Second of all, with respect to uses in the downtown area, as a matter of fact, we met this morning on that very topic. We know right now that the downtown district is fairly restrictive in terms of the commercial uses that are allowed, and that was done for valid reasons back in the day in terms of trying to, I guess, kind of redefine downtown. But certainly in today's market, and especially with the advent of online shopping, we recognize the need to expand the types of commercial uses that are allowed in the downtown, and we're embarking on that effort and should be bringing something to council in the foreseeable future here on that topic. While I have council's discussion, I'm going to take a minute here to recognize Amy, our case planner. Today is actually her last city council hearing. She's going to be retiring soon in September after 14 years of service. So I know I'm a little out of order here, but I wanted to take the opportunity to recognize her. And over the course of her tenure here at the city, she's worked on some very impressive projects here, as I'm sure you know better than I. But again, I just wanted to thank Amy for her years of service here and congratulate her on retirement while I had the microphone here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, since it's election season, I'm not going to vote for
We have
this.
a motion and a second, and Mr. Mullins pestering me.
Yes. Don't forget, we have to title these. So we have two ordinances that need titling. The first is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside, amending Article 12 of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance text and downtown district map. And the second is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside amending Chapter 14C to apply the inclusionary housing program to the redevelopment project area.
Please vote.
Five zero.
We'll go to item 26, which is an introduction of an ordinance amending number of sections in regards to incorporating the Coastal Commission's suggested modifications. And going away, Amy is going to, well, I'll open the public hearing and start with disclosures.
Just past reports.
Just staff.
Staff.
Public.
Staff.
All right, going away, Amy, it's up to you.
Second and last presentation for this evening, and who knows, for a while. I want to say that I really appreciate having been given the opportunity to serve the community of Oceanside. And with that, we'll move on to the next item, no PowerPoint presentation. Zoning Amendment 1608 and LCPA 1605 involves revisions to the residential, commercial, and industrial zoning districts of the coastal zone and Article 30 of the zoning ordinance that are necessary to complete the certification process for the city's zoning ordinance. Last August, the council amended the zoning ordinance by adding Articles 10C, 11C, 13C, and updated Articles 30 and 41 as part of the zoning ordinance consolidation effort. On July 10th of this year, the Coastal Commission approved the proposed text amendments with modifications. Per the Coastal Commission's regulations, the city has to take formal action and incorporate those changes before the amendments become effectively certified. The Coastal Commission's modifications to a great extent reinstate previously certified policies within the consolidated zoning ordinance document.
The remaining modifications that are concentrated within Article 30 pertain to general site regulations that would apply to projects if such projects are proposed within geologic setback areas, environmentally sensitive habitat, and floodplain areas. Staff finds the proposed modifications to conform with the certified land use plan and recommends that the City Council introduce an ordinance to incorporate the Coastal Commission's suggested modifications and adopt a resolution requesting certification of the zoning ordinance text as amended.
Public hearing, are there any speakers?
There are no speaker slips for this item.
Seeing no speakers, we will close the public hearing. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Motion to approve.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. That'd be a motion to introduce the ordinance and adopt the resolution, right?
Yes. Staff recommendations.
I know it's symbolic here, but I am going to be voting against this. I am still very unhappy that we completely disregarded everything that happened in 1992, actually in 1988, 1990, and 1992. And instead of processing a local coastal plan amendment to adopt the 92 changes, possibly improve on them, we're completely erasing that part of our history. That part of the history of Oceanside was very much citizen powered. A lot of citizens from my neighborhood of East Side came out and were very upset about the changes that were incorporated in 1986, which was increasing densities in especially East Side single-family residential neighborhoods. Some of this ended up resulting in the building of Crown Heights, where you had a single-family residential community. We used to have the best candy for Halloween when I was trick-or-treating back there. And you got these high rises, and even though their market rate rents, you've got several families living in each one in really bad situations. We have tried really, really hard to address these really horrendous housing situations over the years, and to the point of trying to do abatements and even trying to even buy one of the worst buildings and turn that into an affordable housing project, and we were not able to do that. So I have grave concerns about the changes that we're adopting this evening. Because it does not take into consideration the activism of our residents and the preservation of single-family communities. So that's the basis for my no. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Mullen.
Thank you. This is the introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside adopting ZA 160008 with California Coastal Commission's suggested modifications.
Please vote.
Motion approved, 4-1. Sanchez, no.
So we'll go back to item 24, which is adoption of resolutions related to the special municipal election.
Honorable Mayor and Council members, my name is Vida Pavols, Assistant City Clerk. The item in front of you is to adopt 3 resolutions and introduce an ordinance calling a special municipal election to be held on March 3rd of 2020 relating to the city clerk and city treasurer positions. A quick background on the item. At the February 20th Mayor and Council workshop, Council directed staff to make a presentation to Council on the process to change both the City Clerk and City Treasurer positions from elected to appointed. At the March 27th Council meeting, Council directed staff to place a proposed measure converting the City Clerk and City Treasurer positions from elected to appointed on the statewide March 2020 primary election ballot. If a voter should approve a measure pursuant to Government Code Section 36510, the city manager would be responsible for appointing the city clerk and city treasurer upon expiration of their current terms that would end in 2020. At this point, staff recommends that the City Council adopt 3 resolutions related to the special municipal election to be held on March 3rd of 2020. One resolution would be calling and giving notice of a special municipal election. Second resolution would be requesting the San Diego County Board of Supervisors to consolidate the special municipal election. Third resolution would be setting priorities for filing arguments and providing for the filing of rebuttal arguments and directing the city attorney to prepare the impartial analysis. Lastly, staff also recommends to introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 2.1D of the Oceanside City Code, making the positions of the city clerk and city treasurer appointed by the city manager, subject to voter approval. And I'm available for any questions that you may have.
We have 2 speakers. The first speaker is Arlene Hammerschmidt, to be followed by Rena Maraca.
Good evening, Council. Arlene Hammerschmidt in rural-ish Fire Mountain of Oceanside, 92054. I have 2 concerns. One is the public input and the public decision for elected positions should remain, in my humble opinion. There should not be appointed positions. There could be qualifications beyond what we have right now, and let the voters decide. That's called honoring our public. Second concern I have is a question. It's actually a question. Is this, it is, because she read it. It's 1 ballot measure and 2 elected positions. So I really think those should be separated into 2 separate ballot measures, because they're 2 separate elected positions. I think I said that at the beginning when we were first considering this. I'm sure there's a reason not to have opposition to this proposal on 2 counts. Separate the 2 positions, keep elected positions elected. That's how public makes our voice and our choices known, by elections. Thank you.
What is wrong with you guys? Seriously, this is a democracy that we live in. What the hell? These are watchdog positions, because you don't think that the standards are up to yours, up to your liking, that we should take away the voices of the people that employ you, the people that elect you. And by the way, there are 2 people on this dais here who were not elected by the people. And I don't think you guys should have a right to weigh in on this. Quite frankly, you should be out of this. The people that were duly elected by, these are positions that are the will of the people. You don't like it, so what, you take it away? When did we become the Soviet Union? When did we become a fascist state? When did Oceanside become that? You guys should be ashamed of yourselves. This is the most un-American thing that I can think of, and I think that I know there's at least 1 veteran up there, and I don't even see how you can think this way. This is the democratic process of the United States of America. And it's so un-American that you would be thinking of doing this, of appointing, taking away the voice of the people. If you have to proceed with what you've started, then yes, this needs to go to a vote of the people. And I agree with what Arlene said, that it should be as transparent as possible. But I am sorely disappointed, and you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Seeing no one else, Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. We have, as a council, been having a discussion about the potential for putting this on the ballot for the public to decide. But the discussion was always about allowing citizens, the positions to be done, or the actual ballot item to be done on an off year. We didn't do that last year. You know, we should have done it last year, but it wasn't done. So I know it was never my intent to do this during a primary, especially when we usually expect primaries to be in June, and this is an early primary, this is March. Primaries is usually when voters have a smaller voter turnout. I couldn't say that word. Turnout. Most people will not be thinking about voting in March, and that is really disturbing to me that we would put this item on the ballot at this time. I feel very strongly that we should go ahead and allow the election to go forward in November 2020, and then in November 22, go ahead, and it ought to be on a November ballot. It ought to. This has to do with changing our charter. And major changes like this ought to happen when more people can vote. More people will vote. So I'm very, very concerned about this, especially in light of the fact that last year, rather than, a position as important as the mayor, 3 years left on Mayor Wood's term, that we decided to appoint rather than put this on the ballot. Something much, very, very critical as of the leadership of our city, we decided, no, let's just go ahead and appoint. Well, we've got 2 appointments as for city treasurer and city clerk because people left, for other jobs. And we ought to do the will of the people, and that is these are and have been watchdog positions. If our residents want to change that, and we've heard the stories about Rosemary and stopping the mayor from putting our investment portfolio into a very high risk account, and how she refused to sign on. These are very, very important positions, and we ought to, after full discussion and debate or whatever, allow the people to decide at the right time. I am not against people looking at this, because a lot of cities have changed, but do it in a fair way, do it in a way that is not in your face, and do it at a time when voters vote. So I am going to oppose this. I think that, there are pros and cons to both systems, that is appointed versus elected, and that should completely come out. So that's the basis of my opposition. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Number one, we had 2 speakers. Thank you for your feedback. But the democratic process will happen through an election. We're not making the decision. We are making a decision to put it on the ballot so that the democratic process can happen and the people can decide. We're in a different day and age than we were in the good old Oceanside. We're dealing with a $157 million general fund budget. There is not a degree out there that can attempt, or an amount of staff out there that can attempt to comprehend all the complexities that we have to deal with as a city. And we need a qualified, credentialed individual that can be a watchdog, because the current policies in play, our city clerk doesn't have to show up to one meeting and he gets a paycheck. That's how it's set up right now in the city of Oceanside. And so we want to put this information in front of the people so that they can make an informed decision and make that decision, not us. Let them make the decision. But I would feel a lot more comfortable and I would sleep better at night if we had a qualified and credentialed individual that oversees our multi-million-dollar portfolio as a city. I move motion for approval.
Mayor Feller?
This process is for residents of the city of Oceanside to get their say in whether the clerk and the treasurer are elected. The clerk who was here got elected, but he found that he wasn't making enough money, and he wanted more money from us for an elected position. Well, instead he found an appointed position that makes about 4 or 5 times as much as he makes or was making at the city of Oceanside. And it doesn't preclude the existing treasurer and clerk from applying to the city manager. We are, as Councilmember Rodriguez just said, giving the vote of the people to the people. I mean, this is for the people to vote on, the residents of Oceanside. As watchdog as you want to be, there's not hardly a thing that can go on in this city without first going through a city manager, the city attorney, even if they are the clerk or the treasurer. It has to, it's totally vetted. So to be scolded by a non-voter in Oceanside, it kind of fries me a little.
Councilmember Sanchez?
Thank you. I just want to make it clear to the residents that we do have appointed individuals. We have an appointed finance director who has all the credentials in the world, and those are the checks and balances that we have. When I say watchdog, I'm talking about the public's watchdog, someone who is who has to be responsible to the voters of Oceanside. An appointed means they're responsible to, their authority, not directly to the public. So that is the difference here. So we're talking about checks and balances, but we're also talking about something that this community has felt to be very, very important, and that is that someone who will talk directly to the voters. It is a low-paying job. Yes, it is. It's $27,000, but it is something that is in addition to a finance director, in addition to full-time employees who have the credentials in the city clerk's office. So I just want to make sure that the public understands this is not, you have to have it one way or the other. You're going to have an uncredentialed person in each of these offices. No, we have very credentialed, very respectable, very educated people in the finance department as well as in the city clerk's office. These people here that are before you, who, by the way, have very good credentials themselves. Zeb, what you're going at for your master's. Anyway, pardon? PhD, I'm sorry, for your PhD. You already have your master's. We could, the public could decide to elect someone without college background, but then again, that is a process, that is an electorate process where the public gets to know about the background, about the character, about the people that are running for these positions. So I don't want people, the public to think that, we're not going to have these offices in the hands of responsible people. That is absolutely not true. We do have them, and what I am really opposing here is the process, because it is not fair to have these on the ballot in March. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez?
Just another thing to make a mention before we vote. 75% of the cities in San Diego County have appointed clerks and treasurers because of these reasons, because of the complexities we're talking about, and we want this to go before a vote of the people. And it sounds like Councilmember Sanchez supports this, she just doesn't support the timing of it. So we have unanimous support on the dais right now. It's just one member doesn't support the timing. Just want to point that out.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Mullen?
Okay, you have the three resolutions that are part of the motion for the special election, but I will need to title the ordinance. This is the introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside amending Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 2.10, Subdivision D of the Oceanside City Code by making the positions of City Clerk and City Treasurer appointive by the City Manager, subject to voter approval.
Please vote.
Motion approved, 4-1. Sanchez, no.
We'll go to item 27, which is a request to speak by Mr. Marchi.
Hi, good evening. My name is Fabio Marchi, 2030 Broadway, Oceanside. Council members. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times took me to get a fire approval from the fire department. 7 times. They were nice. They charged me only 6, but right here it shows I was wrong 7 times for the gentlemen that right there. I call the trio Robinson, Parson, Bland. I'm ashamed. And the only thing that I really, to be wrong, is having the property in Oceanside. I'm wrong about that. I'm wrong about developing in Oceanside. This lady is very right. You should be ashamed of having this business. John Mullen ostracizes me. He denied the right to anybody to talk except Esther. She got the guts. Thank you, Esther. My respect to you. Chris Rodriguez also. Thank you to you, sir. But the rest, all of you, what a shame. Of course, Peter, you're not elected. Same like you. You're not elected. Who cares? Let's protect the old boys club that Mr. John Mullen is making up. But elections are coming up. Yes, John, don't shake your head. You are the mastermind here, and I'm accusing you in front of everybody because you hide public records from me. You said that you have to review them. So you are altering the city's clerk function, and you want to put an appointed person to move it as a puppet? Go ahead. I'm coming from a dictatorship when I was a kid, and people that were kidnapped and murdered for people with minds like you. We need to start changing. But my point here is, one of the wrong was like for this lady, Miss Blanche, she's like a 30 years experience. She's not a fire engineer. She's been hired by Bureau Veritas. It's a corporation that makes a $500,000 contract from the city of Oceanside. We are spending $500,000, and this lady was wrong several times in major fallacies of the fire regulation and code. She denied me to have a single riser. She said I have to put a steel pipe riser. She was totally wrong. Even the chief admitted that she was wrong.
Wrap it up, Mr. Marchi.
And yeah, of course, you're going to cut me off because one of you want to talk to me. And I'm glad that Diana is taking. Thank you, Diana. We need new blood in the city management.
Please wrap it up, Mr. Marchi.
My wrap it up is I'm proposing to the councils, because I'm a fiscal conservative. If it's anybody here is a fiscal conservative, let's save $500,000 and let's void this contract with Bureau Veritas because they're saying they're working 52 hours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marchi. You're well past your 3 minutes.
You know, question. Can I ask a question to the council?
You're past your 3 minutes. You can.
Well, you know what? I've been asking for talking for several times.
You're done, Mr. Marchi. Please.
Well, you know what? I'm a citizen. I'm putting $2 million
Marchi,
in
this
the
is your
line.
last warning.
I'm
Please wrap it
bringing
up.
jobs. So you have to give me the right to speak.
You had 3
Otherwise,
minutes.
a monologue.
You knew you had 3 minutes. Please finish right now. Thank you.
Well, I'm asking.
You're done. If you want to have a question, please submit it through the proper channels. We'll go to item 28.
I hope
Or do we have any
this
speakers on
election will
28?
be a change.
We have 5 speakers under item number 28. Our first speaker is Karen Shahan, to be followed by Nick Ritchie, to be followed by Zach Barrington.
Good evening. My name is Karen Shahan, and I'm here because I've been dealing with the water department about a past bill because of a leaky toilet. I live in my home that's been an Oceanside resident family home for over 30 years here in Oceanside. At the beginning of this year, I left on a trip. I was out of the country for about 4 weeks. I came home and my toilet was leaking. And I live by myself, and so there's nobody to turn it off. As a result, my water bill for that month was $450. My average bill is about $100 a month. I called the water department. I told them my situation. It was I was gone. Nobody was there. And I fixed it as soon as I got home, and I repaired it. There was nothing they could do for me. They said something about a tier 1 consumption, and they would give me $40 off of my $450 bill. And I didn't think that was fair. I've actually have rental property in other countries or under other cities and counties, and I've had problems like this before where the water bill, because of leaks in either the shower or the toilet, and the county has been very helpful, and they've waived that one-time excessive bill. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to say that I'm retired, and I have a fixed income, and so this bill was outrageous for me. Because the water department didn't want to work with me, I have an attorney friend that actually wrote a letter to the water department, and he asked to work with somebody so we can try and get this remedied. My attorney had notified the city, and then and in the meantime, I still got somebody from the city calling me about a collection and when I was going to pay the bill. And I said, I'm actually represented by counsel. You have to talk to my attorney. They continue to ask for money, and then on April 25th, they shut off my water without any notification. So then my attorney talked to, I think it was Barbara Hamilton. They had a conversation on the phone. There was somebody from the water department on that conversation with them. My attorney said they talked about it, but the official or the employee from the water company was very rude and he had to hang up. Barbara Hamilton called my attorney the next day and apologized for the action of the water employee, and said that she was very embarrassed about how this employee reacted. Let's see, I'm looking at the time here. So basically, and then I had also just suggested that I would pay the $100, my normal usage is $100 a month. So I've been continuing to pay this $100 a month, my normal usage. It's just that I still have an outstanding bill of like $300. And so I'm asking that they would be able to waive that. I hope I made sense.
Thank you. The city manager will come give you some contact information.
Nick Ritchie, to be followed by Zach Barrington, to be followed by Arlene Hammerschmidt.
Nick Ritchie, I live in South O. Thank you very much, council members. As staff prepares bond information to indebt the city for $24 million, and you consider to indebt the citizens of Oceanside for decades to build a pool, the El Corazon Aquatic Center, I urge you to shelve this project. This project will benefit only a minority. Repair the neighborhood pools. Repair the collapsing, cobbled, potholed roads of Coast Highway. Anything that will benefit the most people. Our roads are currently at a 58, an F, if you will. Even with some Measure X dollars dedicated to roads, it is insufficient. As a resident who has lived 4 years in the road diet experiment between Morse and Oceanside Boulevard, I and many other citizens urge you to return the area to 4 lanes. We must enter to and exit from Coast Highway daily. In our view, we are constantly in danger, especially on weekends and summer, as there is bumper-to-bumper traffic. Just wondering, I was told this was an experiment to be a study resulting in data. I've never seen any. Would you make that data public? In November 2018, it was announced that Brother Benno's conditional use permit would be renegotiated. Now, 10 months later, another 3-member committee from the Planning Commission has been appointed to look at this, and still we wait. Please, as council members, require Brother Benno's to hold the transients they serve accountable to work a program that leads to their restoration. This would be a great service to the transients. In my view, Benno's are doing a great disservice, not only to the citizens of Oceanside, but to the very transients they claim to help. Currently, as Benno's mission statement says, they only feed and clothe. All of us want to see lives restored, not just food and clothes. And after all, this is our city. Thank you.
Zach Barrington. Moving right along. Arlene Hammerschmidt, to be followed by Elaine Cifola.
Oh, good evening, Council and Mayor. Arlene Hammerschmidt, Fire Mountain, ruralish still. So I've been thinking about the upcoming September 18th workshop and the 4 topics that are on the agenda, and I was looking for the common thread that pulls all those together. So I went back and reviewed the video from June 5th, I believe it was, and it seems the common thread is to remove barriers, is my interpretation, but to remove barriers so that we have a more diverse candidate pool. So there are additional ways to do removing barriers as well. I also noted when I was reviewing the video that there was a majority of council open to some kind of a either charter or citizen or committee or commission or something in that realm to, just in the discussion, that wasn't included in the vote, just in the discussion, to mash and hash all this out and make recommendations to council. And I want to share with you some of the discussions that I've had with community members, and to share with you the fact that it is very hard to talk about campaign contributions, and the way it was referred to in council that night was campaign finance reform. It's very hard to talk about that without moving into ethics of the candidate as well as the elected official, because we know money and donations influence, either buy influence or are in trade for influence, or in many cases influences vote. So one bleeds into ethics as well. When we talk about term limits, we're also talking about the requirements to stand for an election, because if you're going to limit the term, then that's a requirement for running. So I really want to beseech you, please, to remain open to the conversations and the topics that tumble one from the other at the workshop. And I also noted a very welcome and expectation to find out what's the public position on these topics. Thank you for that. Public, I'm sure, will let you know what the comments are and opinions are on that. Thank you for remaining open, and thank you for your time. Good night.
Elaine Cifola.
I have some information here I wanted to just put up on the screen. I don't know if I could do that. Just wait. Oh, okay. I have a new topic from this evening. Excuse me. First of all, excuse me, my voice. I am a homeowner from Saran Court, the eastern part of Oceanside, and I'm also a regular poster on Oceanside Votes and Next Door. I'm a former college professor from the city of Orange. I commuted from Oceanside. I'm concerned what I learned from homeowners who have been targeted by their house insurance carriers, including myself, of disturbing increases of their house insurance rates or having these policies canceled due to the December 17 proximity of fires in our area, the Lilac Fire. It's a problem for people living east of College Boulevard near the 76. The fire, as you know, occurred in December 2017. It went as far west near North Santa Fe Avenue for evacuation orders, and I also had to pack and leave. Okay, people are writing to me online about exorbitant increases in their homeowners' insurance policies and cancellations of these policies. It looks like AAA insurance is not insuring anymore. They live in Jeffries Ranch, the Berries, Guajome Lakes, and Morrow Hills. My policy through Nationwide was reissued, but at a much higher rate, and I'm 1 mile south of the 76 off of North Santa Fe. The cause? Proximity. Proximity to these fires is the cause of the increases. It's only going to get worse every year. Now I'm going to tie in another topic and then come back to the house insurance, because there is a problem that's going to explode. Especially frightful is the fact that you, as council, are spending an excess amount of time courting integral for this grandiose scheme of building on farmland. That is one house, one too many. The development on farmland will only add to chaos, pollution, and more wildfires that will occur when, not if, they break out nearby. The world has changed. We live in a desert, a fire-prone area that insurers are running away from now. It's been in all the papers. It is a fact. We get almost 12 inches of annual rainfall, have the guaranteed annual Santa Ana winds that take flying embers everywhere. It just goes. And it doesn't take much to start a spark of fire. I also read that 17 countries are using their water reserves. Look at the amount of rainfall that we get. We have a governor and a board of supervisor mandating that we build more housing.
If you could please wrap it up.
Okay, I wanted to tell you, because I sent you information about establishing a land trust for farmers to help them. Cannabis will help the farmers, but there are other ways to do it as well. I tried to explain it to you, but had no feedback. So,
if you could please conclude.
Okay, I suggest a law that I'd like to bring up, that you make it a crime for anyone running for election who allows financial consideration to pay for their expenses, such as mailing glossy flyers.
Okay, you need to finish. Thank you very much.
Okay.
This time we'll go to item 29. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Keim.
So, item 29 is a request by myself and the mayor to direct staff within 60 days to develop a strategy to reduce crime and improve management at budget motels in Oceanside through methods such as establishing performance standards, implementing an inspection program, targeting excessive calls for service, providing crime prevention, training, including CEPTED, and partnering with business organizations to offer operator education. So this issue, Oceanside in the last 10 years, last decade, has done a tremendous job in addressing some of our crime issues. Our chief's here, he came from Long Beach in 2006, and we have had a tremendous amount of success dealing with gang problems and different crime throughout the city. And at this point, our crime is at the lowest rates it's been, and that's throughout the county, but Oceanside in particular has done very well in addressing quality of life issues and other crime. However, we still have work to do, and I think this is one of the most important times to keep working and find out what are the issues that are causing Oceanside's crime, focus on those, and find dynamic solutions to address them. And this is just one of several items that I think we could do that's really going to make an impact on these quality of life crimes and bring a better quality of life to our citizens, whether it's downtown, it's throughout the city. But we have to be creative, figure out what's really causing the crime, and then address it. And I think this program will go a long way in doing that. What I see this program is, when staff brings back, is more of a partnership with some of our motels, where we sit down and we talk with owners, operators, what the issues are and what we'd like to see as a city to make them safer. Hopefully that is all it's going to take, and that in the past, with my experiences, that works. However, I'm not naive, and I understand that unfortunately that's not always going to work, so we need to have effective ways to actually implement those improvements and make sure that we can enforce anything that we think needs a change or it's not within the law, whether that's code enforcement, police. And so I think whatever staff comes back with will be very effective in addressing this one aspect of our public safety in Oceanside. And Oceanside is a very unique coastal city where our success really depends on how safe our citizens feel and residents and businesses.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Do we do public comment first?
We have two speakers on
two
this
speakers?
item. Yeah.
Call them.
Our first speaker is Michelle Gomez, to be followed by Tim Armbruster.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Michelle Gomez, and I'm a resident here in Oceanside, and I'm also a candidate for Oceanside City Council District 4. I was elated when Councilmember Keim notified me of this item on tonight's agenda. I was proud to serve as a commissioner with the San Diego County Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, where we focused our energies heavily in the areas of homelessness, domestic violence, and human trafficking. I have personally devoted the past several years of my life to combating human trafficking within San Diego County. One of my recent and greatest honors was devising a curriculum and educating a group of high school seniors at Rancho Buena Vista High School about this subject matter. It's no secret that motels are breeding grounds for illicit activity, including human trafficking or modern-day slavery. Although slavery is commonly thought to be a thing of the past, human traffickers generate hundreds of billions of dollars in profits by trapping millions of people in horrific situations around the world, including here in Oceanside. Traffickers use violence, threats, deception, debt bondage, and other manipulative tactics to force people to engage in commercial sex or to provide labor or services against their will. California harbors 3 of FBI's 13th highest child sex trafficking areas in the nation. They are Los Angeles, San Francisco, and right here in San Diego. In fact, sex trafficking is San Diego's second largest underground economy after drug trafficking. The underground sex economy represents an estimated $810 million annual revenue. So what can we do to protect the vulnerable, protect our children, protect our communities, and prosecute the perpetrators? We can move forward in directing staff to develop a strategy to reduce crime and improve management at all of our hotels in Oceanside. The common misconception is this illegal, illicit activity is only occurring at the budget properties. It's not. I'm grateful that my city and the city of Oceanside is taking a proactive approach in this area. I'm hopeful that we as a city will become the model for other cities within San Diego County and perhaps the state of California in doing our part to shut down this inhumane enterprise. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Tim Armbruster. I represent Safe Oceanside. Good evening, council members. Thank you, Councilmember Keim and Mayor Weiss, for bringing this, leading the effort to reduce crime and improve management at budget hotels. Historically, these hotels have had issues with human trafficking, prostitution, drug use, group drug use, et cetera. These activities have no place in Oceanside. We need to enable our police force, inspections, management standards, whatever is needed to make sure that we eliminate these problems for good. You know, I've personally witnessed streetwalkers throughout surrounding these budget hotels. It's just, you know, it doesn't fit with the vision of what our city could be. And I really believe in Oceanside and our city, and I believe it could be a beautiful city. We just need to eliminate these problems. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you. I have some questions about this, and when we're dealing with obviously crime and statistics, I know it's going to be kind of tough to answer some of those right now, but one of my concerns is this moving forward on just isolating this to the budget hotels, maybe from a legal standpoint. Should this be more open to all hotels, or what's your thoughts on that, Mr. Mullen?
You know, I think you could keep it as it's framed right now. We're going to come back to you based on your direction with a report that evaluates what the evidence is to support the solutions that we come up with. And so to the extent that the problems are affiliated with these budget motels, however they're defined, I think we could attempt to target a solution towards them. I don't think the issues in budget motels are the same necessarily as short-term rentals, for example. They're both transient lodgings, but they're not going to be the same kind of issues. So I think, we could take your direction, your feedback tonight, and come back to you with the actual evidence of where the problems are.
Okay. I guess my biggest concern is within 60 days for staff to tangibly wrap their mind around the calls for service associated to whatever the definition of a budget hotel is, mixed with the underground, market of sex trafficking that I feel really, it's near and dear to my heart. That's something I really want to address. I just think this is much bigger. Is 60 days? I just don't know if we're really going to be able to come back with something tangible. This is a great idea. I just think it's gonna take a little more than that.
As I understood, if I could jump in, the direction, it's not to come in with a final solution with an ordinance ready for you to adopt, but it's to come back with a broader strategy. And from that, then an ordinance could be further developed.
If I could, we're going to be putting that strategy together, and we'll share it with you. We believe we can get it done in 60 days. Based on your feedback on that, we'll return with, as the city attorney said, whatever ordinances are necessary to implement the strategy. So we think we can do it in 60 days.
And then I will second Councilmember Keim's motion. So we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Mr. Mullen, item 30.
30 is the adoption of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance to incorporate the Coast Highway Incentive District as Article 9.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. I wanted to explain my no vote on this. We had a workshop. We had a lot of input at the workshop. But before that, I felt that I had input at a good time in the process, at least for the most recent timing of this project. So, first of all, I want to say that the purpose for this project, and then we're talking about the Coast Highway corridor study, was to provide for several modes of travel with the goal of reducing the number of cars and automobile traffic, thereby reducing greenhouse gas, encouraging other modes of travel, for example, bicycling, but also taking mass transportation. This also would include slowing traffic to address public safety issues, but also supporting businesses along the Coast Highway corridor. This is what is really behind what we now call complete streets. The other rationale was to increase the number of housing units with special emphasis on affordability to meet our regional housing needs assessment requirements of the state. In addition, the city is required to address negative impacts, ensuring, maintaining, or increasing the quality of life of the corridor and the surrounding community. So basically, that's what I felt was, where we were going on the corridor study. I think a lot of people were really excited about this vision, about being able to have a very flourishing corridor, especially, I think even parts of South O were kind of supportive of it. But then when we started talking about narrowing the streets and doing the circles and all that, and actually not even providing for public transit, I think that's when we started losing people. Intuitively, I know we knew what the impacts would be to the surrounding community. We knew it would be difficult it would be difficult in traveling along Coast Highway, possible loss of parking with the addition of new businesses in high-density residential, possibly to be approved with reduced parking. We also have had experiences with new businesses and the impacts to the community. For example, when Urge first came in, there was a ton of cars that were parked, not just on that one residential street, but behind that. So we knew what to anticipate, and I thought that we would have a good plan for addressing that. I did ask for a parking study at the beginning of this latest phase. I asked that we consider investing in leased parking lots, much like what we did here in the downtown. It was redevelopment, and a lot of businesses hung on, especially since we had the parking for the businesses. And that's what I was hoping we would do. Remember, there were 5 leased parking lots, along with ours, that was 6. As to the design of the street, I was immediately hit with the fact that we completely left out other modes of travel. We completely left out a green lane for mass transit, leaving the street still mostly a car-oriented road. Leasing parking lots would have gotten parked cars off the road, off the streets, allowing for maintaining several lanes for cars, but also allowing for transit and cycling, truly achieving the goals of reducing cars of complete streets. In terms of public benefits, what I was hoping that we would come up with, since we were talking about increasing densities and heights, and I have to say I think 65 feet is just too high. I really thought that we were going to be talking about public amenities to our communities, to our residents. I would have liked to have seen park space or a library, or even, and I think that this is very critical, a city gym. We have only 2 gyms in the entire city. High demand. There's always constant, talking about, well, they don't give us space, whatever. 2 gyms in city, indoor gyms, indoor basketball courts, for a city of 170, whatever, probably more like 190,000 people. And I thought, well, this was an excellent opportunity to plan to meet the needs of our community and to continue to provide a quality of life for residents. So I'm sorry we weren't able to get all of that. sometimes think, well, maybe there'll be a way of achieving that. Maybe if we just approve this as the first step. But if we do this, we're basically excluding everything else. So this is the time for me to basically voice my objection and to vote my conscience and say no.
Thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez?
Move approval on adopting the ordinance.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
For one, Sanchez, no.
Do we have any general council member comments? Seeing none, then we will adjourn to our next scheduled meeting at 3:30 on Wednesday, September 11th. We are adjourned.